Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman, and my guest today is Annie Dike. We're going to be talking about her new book, Clovis. Annie, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Fantastic. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure. I'm glad to have you here as well. And for those who are familiar with the show, we like to start things off talking about anything we may have read or watched lately. I'll go first just to give Andy a little time to collect her thoughts. Two things on the reading front and one on the writing front, or not the reading front, two on the watching front. That's what I meant to say. So the two things I watched because it was playing at a local theater, but I was unable to go. It is one of my absolute favorite movies ever. Was the first Back to the Future, just because couldn't go to the theater, so I just watched it in my living room, and boy, I still love it. I could watch it all the time. Always something great, and to me, it is one of the two absolutely perfect scripts, and the other one being Chinatown, and just. You can't go wrong with it. There's always something great about it, and I love the way the story's put together and the characters, and just to me, it's one of those perfect movies. And the other movie was my wife and I had kept meaning to watch it, but we kept forgetting about it. And I just remembered, why don't we try this? So we watched Anatomy of a Fall, which was very good. It was a little slow at parts for me, but overall, I really liked it. And it was definitely a conversation starter for when it was over. And just really glad we finally got around to watching it. So very happy about that. And I don't have the book in front of me, but the book I've read, I just happened to go into a bookstore last week and it was on the remainder shelf. It is pretty much a trade paperback of a Green Lantern comic series called
Oh,
Far
fun.
Sector. It's about Earth, a Green Lantern from Earth who is at probably the farthest sector of the universe, and she's investigating the first murder in 100 years. So it
Wow.
was pretty good. It was very adult in nature, but I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna have to read it again because there was a few things that I missed along the course of the story. But again, I really liked it a lot. So that's it for me. So Annie, what about you?
So, Anatomy of a Fall, I saw that one. I just have to say, as far as conversation starter, love that one because for me, a huge thing about stories is the sides of the stories.
Mm.
There's multiple sides, always multiple facets. And that one actually involved a lawsuit, about the accident. So, being a lawyer, a lot of what I'll tell you about kind of revolves around that. So, I'm really, really glad you picked that one. That's a fantastic movie. For me, it was interesting. This past weekend, I saw on both ends of the spectrum, kind of like super high-end acclaimed, award-winning, and then, I'm going to just call it cheesy fun that I love to watch or read. So, One Battle After Another, the
Mm.
Leonardo DiCaprio one, we finally watched that this weekend. And riveting, I'm
Mm.
not going to say I loved all of it. There's parts where I'm like, oh, I don't like this. I want this to change. But there are parts that I absolutely love. And Leonardo DiCaprio, I have felt can be anything, big, small, smart, rich, wealthy, poor. I mean, he just turns into whoever he needs to be. And there he did a fantastic job again. He's a strung out revolutionary. Very good job. I thought it was really well done. So that was fun. One battle after another. I also saw Housemaid, which is kind of on the side, but I'm a huge Frida McFadden fan, so I got to throw that out there in case she hears this and throws a bone. But I'm just kidding. But
She checks in all the time.
right, right. Yeah, she writes you, emails you. She's like, that
Hmm.
Annie chick, I'd love to interview her. I'm sure that's coming. But it was really fun. And Sydney Sweeney, Amanda Seyfried, and it was awesome. It was just as page turning on the screen as it was in the book. And I had a fantastic time. On the book side, though, I had to finish a little Christmas one. This sounds really silly, but yeah, I always joke with my friends there's like two Christmas plots. It's either like New York City corporate girl that comes home to
Yep.
her small town and has to save the town play or whatever and falls in love with the town handyman. Or this one, which was 10 Things I Hate About Christmas, and she sent a raunchy gift to her boss and needed to retrieve it before it got opened. And of course, boss's son is going to help her, and he's the love interest and
Hmm.
all those things. It was perfectly cheesy, exactly what I wanted. It was an audible, and I walked around and listened to it during Christmas decorations, and it was perfect. It was exactly what I needed.
Oh, that's great. Because yeah, I was going to say it seems like there are two or three standard Christmas movie plots.
Exactly. Plots,
It,
right, right. And I feel like each year I need about two and a half of them, or I don't feel like Christmas happened. I've got to get
exactly.
one of those cheesy plots in.
That's right. There's always that hard-working girl from the big city goes
Yep,
back to her small town,
yep,
and
yep.
the
That's a
guy that
typical
got
one
away
too.
or a new guy is there. Okay, but we don't need to go into
Absolutely.
that one again. Okay, so we're talking to Andy Dike, and we're going to be talking about her book Clovis. But here is the author bio, which is on the back of the book. Annie Dike writes raw, relatable fiction based loosely on her life and adventures, while she has written numerous legal treatises, multiple Amazon best-selling sailing books, and articles for Sail Magazine and her travel blog, HaveWindWillTravel.com. Clovis is her debut literary fiction novel. Oh, Annie grew up in Clovis, New Mexico, relevant, and is an attorney by profession. She works remotely and has spent the last decade cruising the east coast of the United States and the Eastern Caribbean with her partner Philip on their 46-foot sailboat. All right, so first thing, Annie, I want to talk a little bit about you as a
Sure.
writer. So, how did you get your start? I always ask our guests, were you a voracious reader as a child, or is writing something you kind of came to a little bit later in life, or you read something as an adult and said, "This is garbage. I can do much better than that," and decided to give it a try?
And I love this question because it's actually a little hard, like how you kind of started writing and were you a voracious reader as a child? First, I just have to say on that back cover, there's a lot to unpack there, Paul. Definitely pick and choose on my bio where you want to go, or this will be a 3 hour podcast. But
Hmm.
as a kid, I definitely was a huge reader. I loved just anything books from the library that I could get my hands on and anything I could grab for in school, I was ELP, sort of the enriched program. Just for whatever reason, reading and writing really came to me. Math, science, not my forte, but
Hmm.
writing especially just was something I loved to do very early on. One of the books I remember reading as a kid, and it's very funny, I have a like a visceral memory of this, is I sat down to read The Giver, that book, if you recall that one, where the
I don't
one,
think so.
oh my God. Oh, yeah, I'm sure you have if you look back. It's an older person in the community that like holds all the memories of everyone. So not everybody has to experience all the pain of bad memories. It's a really cool concept.
Hmm.
And so everyone in the community, doesn't have the pain of memories. The giver has to hold those and make choices based on. It's a really cool, like lofty concept. And I'm like 10 years old reading this in my room. But I got so absorbed in that book that I sat and I read it till like 2 in the morning. And I told my mom, like, I'm going to bed. And I had a little light and a cover and I was with my dog Jigs, and I remember the way Jigs smells and that book and everything. And
Wow.
that moment was like, I need to read. Like I am built for reading. And I just still remember that, which is a really cool moment. But writing after that, so I started writing little stories and things that I loved. And I still have scrapbooks that are like newsletters I wrote, Sweet Valley High kind of, romances with me and my elementary boyfriends that always broke my heart and things like that. So I've been scribbling forever. But that'll give you a good start.
Okay, well that's great. I was going to say, writing all of those, I don't know, what would you call it, like preteen or tween era romance stories? Are those sound like, the awful teenage poetry that, I'm never letting this see the light of day type of stuff.
I actually love them. I'm like, bring them out, put them out there. They're great.
Wow, you
Well,
are
they're so funny.
you are a
I always
brave
think
soul.
I'm a comedic heroine. I'll tell you that.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so how did let's get into talking about your book, Clovis.
Sure.
What I like to ask guests is in screenwriting and television, it's the elevator pitch, or also known as the cocktail party pitch, kind of like a 1 to 2 sentence summary. Someone says, "Hey, Andy, tell me about this book, Clovis. What's it about?" And you say,
I say it is an emotional journey. If you want to pick up a book and go on an emotional journey with characters through something very severe and intense in their world, go through that journey and learn what they learn at the end, the lessons about change, pain, loss, all of that. So it's an emotional journey.
Okay, great one. So the big question is, so what was the inspiration for it? Because as we said in your bio, that sometimes the fiction is based loosely on your life. So it made me wonder, like when I started it, I was thinking, okay, it's not autobiographical, I hope. Uh, uh, but also like how much of your life is an influence on the story? I mean, because you described, I guess, the emotional aspect of the story. I guess for people who are wondering, like, well, what's it about? You can't say it's an emotional journey, and it's about. I'd rather you described it than for me to try and attempt to do that.
Sure. And the phrase coming of age, like I kind of hate to throw that one out because it's just so common and it doesn't
Sure.
give you, like if I said, oh, it's an emotional coming of age story, I probably should work on that 1 to 2 sentence. If you pick up my book to read it, you're gonna stick with a gal named Callie, who is loosely based on me for sure. She's definitely got my personality, my upbringing in Clovis, New Mexico, and then it ventures into fiction. But you're gonna go with Callie through all the emotional growth of her teen years, a very hard childhood, family members that rip and tug and pull at each other, and you're going to see her escape that and learn from that and actually appreciate her roots as she gets older. She's going to pull from those memories, even the hard ones and the painful ones, to deal with the, storm that's facing her at the moment. So that's sort of what the book's going to feel like and take you through. My inspiration to kind of write it, as you mentioned, it's not autobiographical, I wouldn't say, not a memoir in any sense, but hugely based in my childhood, 100%. And a lot of the stories are very true. A lot of the things that happened are very true. And this, I'm really glad you're reading it, Paul, because you're a total stranger to me. And so for you, you're just absorbing it as a story, as it should be. For what I've struggled with a lot of my family and friends, they couldn't get past what's real, what's you, what's
Mhm.
fiction. I'm like, stop. It doesn't matter. Enjoy the story, right? It's just supposed to be a really good story. But when I started it, you also ask how you start writing, and one of the big things in my childhood, and you probably got from the book, my dad is a huge storyteller.
Mhm.
And he is, and I don't feel like storytellers have to be published authors, video producers, anything. Usually it's your great uncle or your granddad or someone in your life that was an incredible storyteller. And when my dad starts a story, all the spoons on the table drop, all the glasses go down, everybody shuts up. And it's usually a 5-minute story. Like, you better buckle up. And it's great because it has all the details and all of the fun things. And so my dad told all these stories when I was growing up about his country friends and rodeo. He was a professional bull rider, my dad was. So if you want to imagine stories, he has an eclectic mix. And one of the ones is in the book, the maxi pad story is why I'm
Mhm.
bringing that up. Do you remember that?
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah.
that was a crucial reason that I thought this is such a good, that's a true story, 100%. Such a good story and such fun details that everybody can latch on to, that I thought I need to write a childhood based on stories like this, good, bad, and ugly, because that's a fun one. That's like an easy, cute, but there's also darker notes underneath, like why the things that are happening are happening. I always try to mix the dark with some comedic, with some light, that makes the story stick and makes you remember it, but also remember the lesson. And that was kind of the centerpiece for how the book started. I was like, I need to start telling stories like this from my childhood, but then I wove it into fiction and I can go into that. But that's sort of how it started and
Mhm.
how the book developed.
Okay, I'm going to get into about the book itself, but you bring up a great point. Is that one of the things I noticed pretty much from the get-go was that a lot of the story is peppered with very specific details, not just about the characters, but about the environment and the setting and
I
like
love setting.
so like you talk about Callie's wearing her Care Bears t-shirt and this is how many this like she spent $23 on groceries when she was in school, that sort of thing. uh my initial thought while reading it was this to add like a certain layer of realism, but also to make it a lot more relatable because it's one thing to say she was Callie was wearing her cartoon character t-shirt, and that's kind of vague, but to get into really specifics, her Peter Pan pajamas or her Care
Yes,
Bears t-shirt, was
yes.
it part of your intent, like I want to really flesh out the world that this story is taking place in?
I think it's twofold, and I'm so glad you asked about that because setting is 100% real for me. For me, setting is almost a character in the book. It has a personality and it's involved in the story. Twofold. I wanted to put you in the scene. Like when you're in a scene in my book, I want you to smell it, feel it, taste it. I want you to cough up like what's going on around you. It's so thick, you're almost breathing it in. So all those details help with that. And then also what I love with details, it's going to put you in the time frame. So Care Bears, you're going to kind of know what age I grew up, probably, or it helps with that. So it helps with time frame, which makes things relatable. A lot of my childhood in the book happens in the 90s. And I've had readers say, oh, it was so relatable to me. That's like Stranger Things, which you've mentioned is so relatable to people for that reason. So
Sure.
it helps with that. One other thing I'm trying to establish a lot in my childhood and with my character is socioeconomic. Are they rich or are they poor? And because I think those things are super important to a reader. You relate to a character better if they fit in either a socioeconomic bracket you're in or that you can relate to. And a lot of times they're poor. And for me, those details show you these characters don't have a lot of money. Or they create a scene, like one detail you didn't mention, which I think is really fun. I think the tub is like mustard yellow, and that was the color of our tub growing up. And
Okay.
you think of that like olive draft green appliances, those yellow and green
Yeah,
appliances from like the 70s.
that to me screams out like late 70s, early 80s.
Exactly, exactly. But so if you're a kid of the 90s, you probably have those appliances in your house, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that I actually had a reader write out and they're like, that was the color of my tub. That was exactly the color. So if I can create a moment like that where you go back into your own childhood, that makes the book even more immersive. So that's what those details do for me.
Okay, that's great. That's great. One of the first things I noticed, pretty much, from again from page one, the entire story is told in first person. Now, that is primarily from the point of view of our protagonist, Callie. But why, first question is, why did you decide to use that approach as opposed to a third person narrative?
And there are voices in there.
I
I
know
assume you saw that. Yeah.
that's a question coming up.
Yep, yep. So, because mainly the first thing was first person for sure. I bet a lot of people start out this way. It's easier to start writing in first person, I will say. For me as a writer, it's just it pours out of you. This book was partly, based on my childhood, based on my stories, so that was just made it easier writing in first person. I have yet to write in third person. I'm working on the sequel to this book right now.
Okay.
And currently it's not third person, it's not, but it's made me say, you know what? I need to branch out and I need to make myself do that. I need to try that. For reasons in this book, this one was so personal for me. It's my debut literary fiction. So I think just that tool, I needed to be in my own head to accomplish this, to get the book as good as I needed it. I feel like third person, I'm going to have to, and maybe I'm, selling myself short. Maybe I'm going to be really great at third person. I have no idea, but I haven't done it. So I wanted to use a narrative that I was very confident in. And I struggled with past and present. I'll tell you, if you probably have seen it goes back and forth a lot
Hmm.
to keep it consistent. I found a lot of times when I was in the editing, I was in a memory and I was speaking in, present tense, or I was in the present, I was speaking in the past. That's very fun to play around with, but it takes a lot of work to keep up with. But I would say I just did first person mainly because it was my stories.
Okay. Oh, okay. I totally get that. As we, just alluded to, there are several chapters that are told
Mhm.
from another character's point of view. But for the most part, all of those characters are somebody with some kind of direct connection to Callie. No, these are not spoilers. Like one is her mother, and one is her brother, and one I think is her cousin. So was that your original intent, or was it something that you developed along the way that you kind of felt, okay, I want to have, this character's perspective on
Mhm.
what we just saw or something that's happening. And I can't really have Callie talk about it because it's not her who's the focus of that issue. So was that something that, as you were developing the story, do you think, okay, I have to have, the mother have a chapter to herself, or was it you have the story and you realize, oh, you know what, Callie isn't the one to tell this story. This is something the mother has to do.
hmm Great question. The voices were so much fun for me and I'm glad you focused on the mother because that's where it all started. The voices I had not planned until I got about three-quarters of the way through the first version of Clovis. And there is one kind of big secret, which I won't spoil it either, that the mom is kind of holding for most of the book, and you're wondering about it, you're kind of thinking about it. I'm hoping it, is like a carrot dangling towards the end. And I decided about three-quarters in, I was like, she needs to tell that secret. And when it hit me, I was like, holy crap, she has to talk. Like my mom has to speak in this book. And it kind of intimidated me at first because I was like, whew, I'm really going to have to make this sound like somebody different. That's what I was really striving for. I didn't want it to sound like Callie again, just trying to, mimic her mother. So I worked really hard on that one and I did the mom chapter and I loved it so much that I was like, okay, now everybody has to talk. It's like giving us a cookie. I'm like, well, now we got to hear from Dad and Jay. And so originally, I'll tell you very quick the editing of this book because that'll probably be interesting for you. I did all the characters at the end. There was one voice from each of them, the main that you have now, the Jay, Levi, blah, blah, blah. And they were there, and I thought they were great and beautiful. And I had this huge manuscript, Paul. And when I first wrote it, do you want to guess how long it was? You can guess really high the word count.
Okay, well, so I'm really bad at word count. Okay, so the book right now is about 375 pages. So I'm
Okay.
going to say you probably had what would be the equivalent of, we'll say 800 to 1,000 pages.
Wow, you're actually really good at this. So it was 255,000 words,
Okay,
which is about double what it is now. So if it's
so
375,
750.
yeah, yeah. So you were dead on. So it was huge, which
Mm.
is great. It was okay. It was good, but it wasn't wonderful, because it's too much. It's too much fluff. So I hired an editing company to help me, Kevin Anderson and Associates out of New York. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but I hired them and I said, help me out. And they were barely going to take my book because they're like 255,000. And they're like, do you know how long it is? I'm like, I wrote it. Of course I know how long it is. I'm like, I've been trying to cut it down, but I can't. So I sent it to them. They took it, thankfully. Thank goodness. They've spent a lot of time on my book. But the editor said these voices, he was like, for some reason, you have some knack for this, which I that I didn't know, but he said, you need more of these and you need them earlier on,
Oh.
which was exciting, but again, intimidating. But I thought, okay, all right, here I go. I'm going to do it. And what I decided was I went back to the beginning of the book and I would pick certain sections where I wanted a voice to happen. And I knew the book was already too long and it was moving a little slow because I'm a huge person on character development versus action. Like out of
Hmm.
those two, I always lean towards character. So I would take a chapter that was already written in Callie's voice and I would take it away and write it in a new character voice, if that
Oh,
makes sense.
okay.
So the action stayed the same, but a different character was telling the action that happened. That way I didn't, lose a lot of time. I kept the time frame short. And that worked really well. And I actually loved doing that. That was very fun to have a scene I'd already written, so I'm familiar with it. And then I get to step out of Callie's shoes and walk to the other side of the room and get in another person's shoes and tell that scene a whole nother way. I loved it. It was actually a great exercise mentally for me, for my writing skills. So I was thrilled that he recommended that. So now there's, I think, two of each voice just about all the way through. And like mom speaks twice, dad speaks twice, Jay speaks twice. But one little excerpt on that, you asked about it being difficult. And it was easier for people I knew. Like my mom speaks like my mom, dad speaks like my dad. So I can do those things easier. I know how my dad talks and my brother. But Levi was one character in the book he's totally made up. He's completely
Mm.
fictional. So when I got to him and I had to write like him, like I had to pace the living room for days and try to like, how would he say that? And like, oh, it was fun. It was so much fun. I love this stuff. I could do it every day. So I had a
Oh,
great time with that.
that's fantastic. Real quick question about the editors. So they had, so I guess sounds like a lot of slashing and what was involved. Did they have, let me see if I can best put this the best way. Uh, was there a lot of stuff that was cut that you hated to see it go, but you realize it's for the benefit of the story, not because it helps Annie feel better?
I'm glad you asked that because my answer is a resounding no. I was happy to give anything
Mm,
up that needed to go. And anything you cut out, you can use later. I mean,
mm,
it's fine. Just put it in a document somewhere else. To me, making a really great book is like you got this big sheet of cookie dough, and I had a 255,000 whatever word sheet cookie dough, and I need to cut out amazing cookies, and whatever's left behind. You roll it up, and what do you have? Another sheet of cookie dough. I mean, you make another book with all that stuff, right? So whatever you
mhm,
leave behind is fine. That didn't bother me at all. Surprisingly, my editor was kind of shocked because I was like, just whatever you want, cut, cut. What he did for me, Paul, and because he didn't actually mark it up. And I was very surprised by that. I thought, I mean, there was writing on it, but I'll explain. I thought he would have huge swaths of things
cut,
out,
cut, cut,
move,
cut. Yeah.
truncate. Yeah. And I thought he would do that. But what he did, and this was better, is he gave me the tools to see that. So imagine my manuscript, black and white, pasted on the walls, just pasted. And all I see is black and white. I don't see what needs to go. I can't see any color. And
Sure.
what he did is he taught me, okay, now you're in a scene and people are talking, but you keep talking about her thoughts and you're getting out of the dialogue. Like stop going into Callie's head. Every time you go to Callie's head, you're taking us out of the action. So I could look and be like, oh, I'm back in Callie's head. Or oh, that's too much it's too much in the mind, not enough action. Or he would say, there's not enough conflict. He was like, if things are
Mm,
happening and there's no conflict, everybody's getting along, it's beautiful. He was like, no, you need to add conflict or get rid of the whole thing. So I would look at something and be like, oh, that doesn't have any conflict. Okay. He also told me every conversation needs to be a negotiation. And I thought that was very interesting, but I was like, how can I do that? But I would see a conversation and instantly I saw what he said. We're just talking. Nothing's happening. Nothing's being
hmm.
bartered. Nothing's being given or taken or learned. And I would go, God, that's such a boring conversation. There's nothing happening. So he made me see the whole manuscript in color and I could change it. And it got so much better. I edited it myself in about 6 weeks. My poor partner lost me for 6 weeks. He's like, are you
Hmm.
ever coming back to real life? I'm like, no, it's so exciting. So that's what he did for me. And I was very pleased with that. I probably have another 8 to 10 little tidbits I could throw out like that, but he taught me. He just taught me
Hmm.
how to write better and more efficiently.
Now, I was going to say, you're talking about because with screenwriting, I'm sure it's with regular fiction and prose, it's, kill your darlings. And that a lot of writers are hesitant to do that. But I found with my personal experience is that if I have something in a script and it's not working or it's not contributing to the story, I cut it. and sometimes it might kill me to do that. But as you said, I can put it aside for use in a different story. But I've
Yep.
also found that as soon as you take it out, it's almost like it's plucked out of your memory because
Mhm.
when you're reading it the next time, you don't remember that it was there.
Right.
It just okay, does the scene flow better? Does it help portray the character? As you said, is it emphasize or reinforce the conflict of the
Right.
scene? And
Right.
so that, a lot of writers have to get over the fact that they have to do what's best for the story or and not what, this is a work of genius. I'm not going to change a thing.
I hardly think any of my stuff is a work of genius. So I'm always like, tell me what to do. But I had no problem cutting. It was a fun exercise. I really loved
Okay.
it. And I have half of Clovis, the old half, sitting somewhere on a shelf that I can
Sure,
go
of
back
course.
to. So
Of course. Don't, I was going to say that's something else. Once you cut something out of your work, don't throw it away because
no, don't.
you never know. It may come back in some other form because there's always something of value to it.
Right.
I also want to ask you, so one of the details I really enjoyed, and I've seen this a couple of times before in other books, is that pretty much every chapter ends with almost like a kind of teaser for what's
Oh,
about to happen.
that's good.
Mostly a lot of times it's in the following chapter, like the last line of a chapter was just an example, boy, was I in for a surprise, that sort of thing. And then it goes into, or what is it? And yes, you can swear. It's what is like a really bad fucking day or something like that.
Oh, good. I'm
So
actually glad you said that because I'm like, I have a mouth of a sailor and I have to warn
that's
podcast
okay.
interviewers like, whew.
So I was going to say, was while you were writing it, was that your intent? Like, this is how can I? What's the most effective way to lead into the next chapter? Or was that something that, was that a suggestion from the editors, or was that your own idea? I mean, what was the impetus for including that?
I think that starts a lot earlier for me. Some very quick backup for me. So, my education and training is I'm a lawyer, and my legal career started as a trial lawyer. And so, a lot of that is telling stories. That's really all we do as a trial lawyer. We go into court, something happens, somebody's hurt, somebody's responsible. That's a story. And so we need the jurors to empathize with our client, understand what's going on through their head. And so, in trial work, anytime you stand up to speak you need to gather attention, and either you're going to do it loudly by
Hmm.
making a motion or saying something, or a lot of times what lawyers do is very impactful is you stand up and you're quiet and you whisper the thing that needs to be heard, however you want to gather attention. So for me, starting a chapter is like standing up in the courtroom. Like it's something new and big that should happen. So I always start a chapter often with dialogue. You've probably seen that. You'd be like, why did you drop that? And that's just the beginning of the chapter. And you're like, well, what they drop? Who the hell's talking? Like, what? You can't just turn away. Ending the chapters was a new thing for me, more writing that, if you're going to end a chapter. And for me on Clovis, which was really fun, I went back and forth to the past to the present a lot.
Hmm.
And I had that happen in chapter transitions a lot because I used sensory things like say she'll smell something in the end of the chapter. Oh, I smell smoke. And the next chapter, when the smoke cleared, blah blah blah. And maybe you're in the present and you went from the past to the present with that sensory experience. I use that a lot, or a color would bring you from the past to the present. So for me, the chapter tie-ins, it's either something exciting you want to learn about, or it's a very useful tool to take the reader to a new place, either in time or location.
Okay, well,
That's
I
what
was going to
I love
say
about
a
it.
lot of times the thing that the end of the chapter is leading into, it's something not just relevant but also important to
Yeah.
Callie's story. Like, it said it talks about this significant or momentous event in her life that has a ripple effect. It impacts everything, their ramifications moving forward for her. And that's something I also wanted to really compliment you on is that it's an interweaving of two stories because you're telling what's happened in her past, but a
Yeah.
lot of that is framed with I don't know if you'd call it a story engine, but it's the story that's set in the past.
Hmm.
And so we are getting glimpses of both almost simultaneously that, I'm not going to give too much away. She's in the hospital.
Yeah.
But all of these things are happening, that reminder of things that happened in the past. Was that also part of your original way of going to tell the story, or was that something that developed? Or again, like we'll go back to the editors. Was that their suggestion? Like, you have her life up to this point, and all of a sudden, hospital, and what happens after that? Or did they say, you could probably, you could combine these, weave them together in a special kind of way that gives more impact to both the present story and for the past story?
Thank you for the compliment. That's exciting. I'll take that. The cool thing is when I sent the book to the editors, substantively, it's roughly exactly how you see it now. Like I definitely didn't change how it started. That when it went back in time, even when I added the character voices, like I said, I just took out a scene that was already there and told it with a character. So I started the book, if I'm recalling from she starts in the hospital in chapter one, and it's like, bam, and you're in the hospital, and something big and traumatic has happened. And so you want to unpack from there. I would say that comes from my legal background too. Anytime we give an opening statement, we usually start with the incident. Like she was driving down the road and that everything changed. And then you go back in time. Well, let me
Mm.
tell you about Miss Blah 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 when she was, whatever. That's often how we tell stories. I do that too in my writing, in my sailing books, my blog. I've often started stories right in the center of the action because to me, that's just more impactful. So you start with her in the hospital. But what was cool about this book is I had to tell the whole history of how, because or
Hmm.
she's not relevant to you if you don't know who she is, what she's about, and what she's going through. So that was my first time going past and present. So no, that wasn't the editor. That was all me. I started in the hospital and went back in memories and just had a lot of fun playing with, like I said, how she went back, why she went back, why does she go back in time for the reader? Like, I can't just go back to tell you she had a Care Bears t-shirt and she loved it when she was 8. That's not going to do anything for you. What happened when she was 8 that was important in her family and in her mental development? That's why I'm going back in time. It was fun. It was a neat challenge. I try to make everything meaningful, intentional, because it's easy to just write. She was walking down the street, she had a hamburger, it tasted good, she went home. I mean, it's so easy to write like that, and I could do it too, but make everything relevant and intentional. That's where your writing has to slow down and you have to like step out of it and look back at it. But I love that. That's my favorite part of it.
Okay. I actually wanted to also talk to you about the characters. That it's a really impressive aspect of the whole thing is that there are these multiple levels of connectivity between the
Mhm.
characters. I mean, Callie's at the heart of it, but you also have the people in her immediate circle, I guess her family, and
Mhm.
then you like slowly expand those circles, the cousin and her best friend from high school and her brother, and
Yeah.
and then, the guy she eventually meets and falls in love with, and the brother's significant other. It's just like
Mhm.
you start with this character and slowly build all of these relationships, but also it's not just the circles around her expanding, the connections between those circles are also developing over the course of the story. I mean, it I don't want to say it caught me off guard. She's, living, she's out of school and she's trying to establish a career. And all of a sudden, her cousin shows up at the
Right.
doorstep. Like,
Yeah.
did not see that one coming. So, how much plotting and outlining did you have to do to put the whole story together? And I guess it also raises the question, did you know like which character you wanted to put in somewhere specific?
Very good question. Okay, so two parts because I want to make sure I
Sure.
get two things out of there and I'm trying to remember the J, cousin J coming back in my life. So hold that for me because that's very, very important.
Okay.
And then plotting it out. Okay, so what happens to me, and I hope this happens to other writers, and I hope I'm not just some weird freak incident, but that's totally possible. No, I'm that way in many other areas, but I have, of course, a general arc. Like this character is going to get married to a guy. He's gonna die, and she's gonna meet somebody new, or something like that. I have a huge arc. But in my what happens for me is when I start a scene. Of course, we've talked about setting, so I'm going to do everything I can with the setting. Just make sure you're there, you're tasting the scene. And then my characters walk on, Paul, and they start doing things that I don't expect them to do. They pick up props, they talk to each other, saying things I didn't really expect them to say when I sat down to write. But my interactions, I want to feel very real. So they're going to brush their hair, they're going to eat a piece of gum, they're going to sit down in a chair that bugs them and move to a different chair. It's a real scene. I don't want it just to be a literature scene. I didn't want you to feel like you're in the room with us. So when they start doing things like that, what happens, Paul, is they start shaping my plot. Because maybe they'll make a joke to one another and it becomes a running inside joke or something. Or maybe they pick up a piece of paper and draw on it and that becomes a famous drawing in the book forever. The things they do, they influence me. And that sounds crazy, but it's like they take the stage and I don't control them anymore, which is great. But that's how sometimes a lot of those scenes come about in my characters and why they meet new characters and connect. Because in real life, how many people have strange families that have a wayward aunt and a weird cousin, an adopted person, and a lesbian brother, sister, and I mean, everybody has these strange families, and they are formed, I believe, in real moments like that. They're informed by just real life. So that's why I think that happens that way. It's supposed to feel real, like
Hmm.
a family like this, and I hope that feels that way. The Jay story was one that actually was kind of outlined, and I wanted it was going to be in the book from the beginning. And a very quick story on that, because that will explain a lot of the book too. Several things I wanted to do in this book was right wrongs, and I mean right, WRITE. Like I could write a right, and I don't know if you've ever thought about doing that or writers have done that. Like, God, I wish I could say the things to that person who maybe passed away or is not in
Mm.
my life anymore, or change how I responded in a situation. Maybe I can do that in a book. It doesn't fix it, but it helps you as the
Sure.
person. So Jay is he's a real cousin in my life. And without revealing too much, he was back in Clovis. I did leave and I went to college and, got out of there. That's all very real. Everybody's trying to escape because it's just a pretty bleak place. Jay stayed behind, and I was in college and had just started working at a law firm, and he wrote me and he was like, "Hey, can I come for Christmas?" And in the moment, it hit me weird. And I was at work and I was really stressed. And he's back from Clovis, New Mexico. And you know how, I'm just being honest, anybody that starts a new big corporate life, you're afraid to let things from the past show. You don't want that curtain to get pulled back. And I don't feel this way now, but I felt that way then. I was like
Hmm.
22. And so I just told him, I don't know, Jay, I'm kind of busy. How long are you planning to stay? Is what I emailed him. And he immediately said, well, never mind. It's no big deal. And I tried. I was like, no, please come. I'm sorry, but I should have said, come whenever I'll buy your ticket, come. And I didn't. And so things happened to him that weren't great, and his life didn't turn out wonderful. Those aren't my fault, but I could have probably maybe changed things, and I wish I had.
Hmm.
So in this book, when he comes to my doorstep in the book, I take him in
Right.
because I
Right.
did not in my real life.
Sure, sure. Okay, that does raise the question, while you're writing these characters, even though a lot of them are based on people from your life,
Mhm.
did the things that they said or did any of them actually surprise you? Like, when you sat down to write, you did not anticipate things developing that way or things happening or a character doing something that maybe you initially would think that's very out of character for them, but all of a sudden you think, no, that is something they would do.
That's a great question. It would be a spoiler alert, which I'm kind of fine with. I'm not gonna like really, really reveal it, but
You can be very vague about it if
I
you
will.
want
That's
to.
what I'm gonna do
Okay.
because it's one of the romance plots that I never saw coming, and I didn't think it was gonna happen, and I just didn't even dream it up. And I started writing the book, like you said, and characters start talking, they start interacting, and then I had a friend in my real life who had this is why I won't reveal it. The little love plot thing that happens at the end that's very painful for the main
Hmm.
character. That happened to a real friend of mine in her life. And I was, and I think all of us can say this as we're writing, everything from your life comes in. What's trendy, what people are eating, professions, it's just things you don't really dream up everything from scratch. You pull it from your life. And if that happened to a friend of mine and I thought, holy crap, what would that be like to go through? And so it maybe that's not the characters doing it, but I started to think about it and I was like, yeah, I think they could. And wow, that's going to be painful and hard. And how do I navigate that? And one of the things that I just learned recently, Paul, I'll share with you on I study a lot of writing stuff. I'm sure you do too and listen to it. One of the things that the gal said, and I thought it was very relevant, is that it's okay if you don't know where it's going.
Hmm.
If you're anxious about what's going to happen, the writing's going to have that nervous energy, that
Hmm.
fretting. And she's like, and it's going to feel exciting. And I thought, okay, trust it. I don't know where it's going, but I started writing it and it worked. It worked really well for me. And so that was it. It was something happened outside of the characters, but I kind of tried to make them do that and they did it and it worked.
Okay. That's
Surprisingly.
great. This is kind of a combination of question and tying things up. I really appreciate that a lot of the storylines do wrap up to a certain extent, but some of them remain open-ended. So was that the ending you started out with? But also you said you're working on, I guess, a follow-up to the book, which sounds like it might be a sequel to the
It
book.
is. It
Okay.
is.
So it was that intentional when you were writing it, or when you were writing it, you were not even thinking about, book number two is just that this is the appropriate place to end this story. But I also like the idea of leaving, these plot threads, these subplots open-ended or open to interpretation by the reader.
Right. So this one I can actually hand to my editor, which is great. He
Okay.
helped me out with that. I'll start back just very quick when I sent the whole book to them, the huge big one. I was hoping it could be 3 books, Paul. I was hoping
Oh,
they told
okay.
me I'd written a trilogy. I was like, that'd be great, like to have written three when you sat down to write one. And they talked about that in the beginning. They were like, maybe we could chop it in certain places, and there was talk of that, but I would have had to add a lot more action and filling in to make,
Hmm.
a third of that book a whole book, right? So we started to scrap that, but when it was the whole thing, 3 books, the ending was pretty clean. Everything
Hmm.
was tied up, everything was not messy at all. It was nice. And I used the word conflict earlier because my editor, he was huge on that, Paul. He was like, "Oh my God, these characters." He's like, somebody needs to leave their socks on the floor or not clean the bathroom." He was like, "They are just way like Jay and Braden and Callie were like best friends forever and had never irritated each other, never got mad at each other, never argued." He's like, "This is ridiculous." I know. And he helped me out. And then he's like, "This ending is like sunshine and rainbows." He was like, "Please, I'm throwing up in my mouth." And I'm like, "Okay, okay." So he was good. And so I did a profession thing, like her work thing kind of gets, and there's some romance that's like open-ended. And I thought that'd be fun. I played around with several things and I had them wrapped up and I opened it back up and just left them as some threads sticking out. But I hope, like you said, I tried to close the ones I felt needed closure.
Okay, well, again, we are talking to Annie Dike about her book Clovis, which is what we've been talking about for the majority of today. And so apparently, sequel in the works. Any anticipated release for that, or it's still in development stage? You're still cranking out pages or words a day?
I am a super diligent person. I tell people you can take the type A gal out of the courtroom, but you can't take the type A out of her. So I am hyper diligent. But I have a newsletter going on, which is really fun if anybody wants to join. It's called the Clovis Club. And so I'm letting them know it's probably going to be about April-ish that I should have a version ready for beta readers to start reading. And the goal is to publish in November. So
Hmm.
I'm hoping April to November. I'm trying to be very cautious with it. That gives me a long time to get reader feedback, get it professionally edited, all that stuff. So no, I'm about 45,000 words in. It's about halfway done. So it's coming along, and it
Yeah.
definitely it pulled right off Clovis. I didn't plan to write a sequel when I first started all this, but I'm really glad my editor left me with those strands out. So now I'm just picking them up and braiding
Hmm.
another one, and it's
Has
really
has
fun.
it been easy for you to kind of like jump back into that world and work with these characters?
So easy. Like they live in my brain. I've told like if my poor partner thinks like he's lost his woman for life because I'm just in my laptop all the time. I love it. I've had a lot of fun with it. I never thought I'd write a series at all, but I do see the draw that once you create a character that's so rich and has all of these backstories, the really fun part of that, Paul, that I never envisioned is on the sequel is you can like do a little toss back to that stuff and it's almost
Hmm.
like an inside joke with your reader, because you're just dropping this tiny little thing about something major that happened, but it's a
Sure.
whole nother book or a whole nother movie, and y'all need to go watch it. It's almost like paying homage to my reliable people. I'm like, y'all know what I'm talking about. That's been really fun. I've really enjoyed that.
That's
So that's
fantastic. Okay, well,
it's
we
been great.
haven't we have been talking to Annie Dike about her book Clovis. Where can people find out more about you and your work? I mean, your website, any social media platforms that you happen to inhabit?
I have a ton. So everything starts at anniedikeauthor.com. Very easy to remember, just my name, author.com. And there I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Every 3 or 4 days I put up some fun stuff. I have the newsletter, I think is the biggest thing. If you're really interested, that's kind of the coolest place to stay the behind the scenes stuff. So you can sign up for the newsletter on the website too. On YouTube, as I had mentioned to you, I am reading the book slowly, but for people that a lot of people wanted me to read it because it's about my life and a
Hmm.
lot of people know my voice and they've enjoyed that. So I'm reading it chapter by chapter there. You can follow along there or email me. I'll send anybody a free copy. I don't mind at all. The point of this book is to get it out. So e-copy, you can click right at the top. I will send it right to you. I just love honest reviews is all I ask for. So that's
Okay,
it.
and also I will say that in the copy that she sent me, it says, as even a line from the book, "Scars make good stories."
Nah, that is one of my taglines.
I was gonna say
They
that
do. I
def.
have a ton of them. I could point out
Oh
each
yeah,
one and tell you a
I was gonna
story.
say I'll show you my hand sometime as well.
Right?
All right, thank you so much, Annie. This has been great. And
Oh,
viewers and
my pleasure.
listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. Before I get to my social media, I'm going to do another plug. for the post-production of my short film Shecky. That is on Indiegogo. Now, the good news is we hit our goal for post-production. Now we've established a stretch goal. We want to try and raise a little bit more funding so we can start entering the film in some film festivals a little bit later this year. So it's all on Indiegogo. Just go to Indiegogo Shecky post-production. It's the only one on there that's called that. So any donation you can throw in is greatly appreciated. We've got tier rewards. We've got a new reward for the stretch goal. It involves me telling a really, really lousy joke just for you. So give that a look-see. So now, my social media is you can check out my screenwriting blog. That is MaximumZ.blog. For Twitter, I'm at Maximum_Z, and it's at Pez Screenwriting for Blue Sky and Instagram. And this show has its own accounts on Twitter, and for Blue Sky, it is at Podcast CWL. And I've got my Go Ahead and Ask books. Those are on Amazon, the ones about screenwriting and pie. Like I said, that's Annie. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life Podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.